I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Jonathan Ramsey.
Here.
Michelle McHugh. Here. Dan Kilchiola.
Here.
Ken Demers. Robert DeCina.
Here.
Karina Noyd.
Here.
Robert Vitalik.
Here.
Marian Rosa. Rachel Ryan.
Here.
Thank you. And tonight we have budget presentation for the water and sewer.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mark Ramo, the Town Manager. I provided you quite a bit of information in the packet, and I've included a PowerPoint document that I've left for you at the dais. I wasn't quite sure, there's a lot of information here, and I wasn't quite sure how to go through this so that we could really work through it and understand, because the idea behind my presentation is to set a baseline. Considering everything that we've been through with water and sewer, I think we have to start at that baseline and then move forward from there. So these documents that were created were vetted with WSA. And the idea behind them is that we're going to move forward with a marketing campaign as we move through this process, because we still have to go through our bond conversion. We have to talk about rate settings. And as we get into the budget, I needed to balance the budget by adding revenue to it. So right out of the gate over the next few months, we're going to be talking to WSA so that they fully understand what the numbers actually represent, but it's incumbent upon us to present a budget, balanced budget. So I'll go through the documents. If you want to stop and ask questions, I'm happy to clarify at the point that you have your question, or we can go through the document and then we could backtrack, whatever you prefer. It doesn't matter to me.
Do you have a preference?
We've been working on this so much, I don't think it'll be an issue. Whatever you prefer would be fine. So starting with the PowerPoint, can we put that up as a full PowerPoint from beginning all the way at the top? Yep. So tonight's presentation explains how the FY 26-27 water and sewer budget was built and why it looks and may feel different from prior years. We spent a lot of time actually looking at the water and sewer side of it, looking at our infrastructure. I think it's most important for us at this point to really look at the administrative side of it and understand where we're going to head over the next few months. This is a budget framework discussion. I don't want anybody to think who may be looking online that this is talking about rates. I will refer to us, through discussion that we have to discuss rates, but this is in no way a rate setting discussion. It's just for your understanding. The goal is clarity, transparency, and shared understanding before and as policy decisions are being considered. So we know this is going to go back to WSA. And eventually it'll have to go to our residents for them to look at the budget in general. So tonight is again about understanding our baseline. Rate discussions may follow later, but only after the data and assumptions are understood. And I think this is going to give us a great understanding of where we're at and where we need to go after we're done tonight. So what is the Water and Sewer Authority? We all kind of know because we spent a lot of time talking about it. I included in my packet, and I apologize up front. I noticed that I dated them all because I updated them. And now I don't have a real reference point, but it was the first executive summary dated February 20th, 2026. And it was basically a budget overview and key changes. I created that document so that you could use it for your discretion as you go through all the information to understand how I pieced all this information together. It gives you a roadmap through the other executive summaries within the packet. And this has been a process. We will report back to the council as we continue to move the department forward. But numbers have changed over the last few months as we dug further to get more numbers and we understand better how things were reported. Numbers have changed a little bit. No material changes have been made. And at the end of the day, the budget will be the controlling document for us to to gear our understanding of where we're going from here. So I think just a quick a refresher on the enterprise utility, the water and sewer authority. It operates like a utility. It's not a town department. It does not receive general fund tax dollars, and bills include two parts: usage charges that change with consumption, and then flat fees that support fixed costs like billing, staffing, compliance, and system readiness. I did a little research because at first I was, I really thought that it would be very important for the flat fees to catch all our operation budget, and that the flow of sewer and water would make up the rest of that budget. I don't have a clear answer at this point. Later on in this presentation, we will talk how we're going to put this back to a company that will actually look at all the numbers we used and verify that we're on the right track with everything. That was done in 2025. WSA chose not to use that budget booklet that was created for them. I've resent back to that company all the information. I've asked them to fulfill the obligation of that 2025 rate study with the updated numbers. So we know that even when usage drops, many costs remain. That's kind of the process behind the usage piece and the flat fees. Another piece that I don't think ever really was clearly discussed, at least in my 5 years and probably 10 years before that, we never really talked how those capital budgets worked. So if we think about our two operating budgets for water and sewer, water being Fund 015 and sewer being 017, that's our operating budgets for those two entities. So all the revenue should enter into those two budgets and then filter out through an appropriation process, whether it's the budgetary process as we're doing now, or a specific appropriation request that would go through the WSA and then presented eventually to the town council. So in this budget that I've presented, and I'll restate this again, I transferred no money from the operating budgets, our 015 and 017, to the capital budgets. I felt that not having a assistant superintendent or superintendent in place, I didn't feel comfortable transferring those monies into the capital budgets. So basically they're flat funded, whatever's in there for savings or for a revenue piece, or I'm using the wrong term, whatever money is in those budgets will stay there as a flat number. We're not going to transfer anything in until we get our footing again and we have somebody in charge of the organization. I did talk with staff. They are fully aware of it. If something comes up, we would go through the appropriation process, which would help not only WSA, but the town council to stay on top of what's happening within that organization. The other piece of that is that as we get a new assistant superintendent, it's basically going to help them understand how that organization is running by that process. So I felt that's going to be a good training piece for that individual when they do take the job. This budget year is a transition year. A lot has to do with, we're aware of the litigation from the city of Waterbury against Watertown. We have a lot of work ahead of us over the next 6-12 months as we try to delve through all this. I felt that prior budgets did not fully reflect the long-term average usage. So I did create a document for you that actually looked at water and sewer from a multi-year level. And we then took an average from that so that we basically had a better understanding of what our usage and costs were. So I'm not going to go into those documents unless you have questions specifically for it, because there's a lot of information in there, but I will be happy to go through that if you choose to ask questions. As I stated already, our full debt service is now coming due in October of 2026. And that's something we have to be ahead of, so we really understand the impact to the WSA. This budget clearly does not expand services. It basically, our past superintendent was trying to build a budget to get a lot of projects done, which is something that we talked about. We understand we have to invest in our infrastructure, and he was working to do that. knowing now everything that we've gone through as a town, we have to kind of sit back a little bit, maybe put the infrastructure on the back burner for the next couple of years. I'm not saying ignore it, but put it in the back burner until we can understand what the impact of the rates are to our residents. So again, I went on on the water side, I went on a 7-year average. And on the sewer side, I went on a 6-year average. And the reason I did that is not to create confusion or more speculation as to why I did it. It was the data that was available to me when I was working through this. And I made a choice. It was either take a 7-year average that I would have claimed was 7 years, but the dates would have been different, or utilize a 6-year and a 7-year and just explain that that's what I did. And I chose to just explain what I did. If at some point we want to go back and use that data, I'd be happy to do it for you. We do have that data available at this point. When this was created, we did not have the data available. So again, just referencing back to my executive memo, dated February 2026, there were 4 attachments, exhibits A through D, which actually explores through revenue and expense on both water and sewer. Looking at our water operations first, we purchase our purchase of water is obviously our largest water side expense, and costs are calculated using long-term average, as I discussed already. This does not include any penalties, adjustments, or it's just a planning baseline. We are finishing up our audit. We feel our numbers are very tight, but there are still adjustments that could be made by our auditor, and any changes would be reflected in the budget. And if it's material in any way, it would be made aware, the WSA would be made aware, and so would the council. So everybody understand what flats are for the water and sewer? Because I'm going to refer to it a lot. Flat charges are the base charges that when you get your water bill, it's usually for a certain size line, you get charged $35, say. So we generate revenue for those flats, and that's kind of what supports our operating budget. So as we talked about usage, we do have a revenue increase based on usage, but it's really supported by mostly flats. So as I refer to flats under water and sewer, that's what I'm talking about. So sewer costs differ from water because disposal is metered as an outflow with inflow and infiltration. So as we talked about water and sewer before, we talked about I&I. We know it's a very big cost to the town of Watertown, as well as our partner on the Watertown Fire District. And that's something that we're addressing during other avenues. I left money in the budget, and we'll actually go through the budget once we get there. I left money in there to start working on I&I. I didn't leave as much as we had talked about last year because I wanted to cut this budget back. As we get our new assistant superintendent or superintendent, we will make those decisions, and WSA will move forward with trying to combat I&I. The total system flow drives costs. So as we talk about I&I, the more water and seepage we get into the system, the more costs we pay, and we have to pass that on to our constituents. So in the documents, exhibit A through D, talking about WSA retail customers in Watertown Fire District. Watertown Fire District is basically a wholesale user to us. There was a 1976 agreement between the town of Watertown and WFD, which set rates at the rates that Waterbury were charging us. So as you know, we passed those directly on. In my presentation, we talked about, or I labeled the fire district as actually a wholesale user because we're just passing those costs on. So basically the cost difference obviously is between our retail customers in the fire district. There's 2 separate rates, and they're adjusted appropriately depending on whether you're a fire district person or a regular WSA ratepayer. So again, my budget that I'm going to present is there's no service expansion. there's stable staffing. We're not increasing in staffing in any way, and we stabilized our operations. I'll highlight some numbers that we left in there, even though I cut back on the capital budgets. I did leave money in the operating budget to seed programs that are going to be very important for us to work on over the next year. Even though we are staying stable, we do have staff that are going to be left that we're going to want them to take on other tasks, such as looking at I&I. You know, we have to worry about, the word always slips me, lead and copper. We have to worry about that, and there's money in the budgets, and I will point it out to you as we move through that.
Policies, procedures.
So, thank you. We did talk about, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, I did start the WSA down the process of looking at their policies. They're gonna start reviewing them. They have not been updated. Some go back into the sixties. So monthly, we're gonna go through those policies. It'll give us an opportunity to look at those policies. It'll update staff. We'll renew them and understand how they fit into 2026. Once we onboard a new leader to the organization, it'll be a process that'll give them an opportunity to actually understand where WSA organization has come from and where we need to go. So it'll be a good process for that individual to be fully seated and understand where we need to go as an organization. So sewer operations, Fund 015. We'll talk about sewer and water specifically tonight. So as we talked about on the revenue side, if we go to the next slide, please. That $6,721 and $6.7 million is basically a makeup of our revenue, considering what we take in on the retail side for the Water and Sewer Authority, what we take out on the wholesale side, which is about 1.4 million contributions from the Watertown Fire District, and then the flat fees, which is about 1.5 million. I did add $750,000 into this revenue line item to balance the budget. So our expenses were more than our revenue. So to balance
Dollar amount, $750,000.
$750,000. So what what I intend to do is we'll be going back to WSA and say, okay, our budget as is being presented is $750,000 short. We're going to need to raise rates to understand that impact. But in doing so, I don't want to move this too fast because we do have to understand that we did freeze the WSA budget. So there will be revenue that will be left over in the budget from this year that we could use to pay the bond conversion in October. So it's going to be a moving number, and everybody has to truly understand what those numbers are as we move forward. What is not reflected in the expenses nor in the revenue is any capital improvements. I left that number out because I felt that WSA needs to reprioritize what their capital needs are, and then from there we could work that back into the budget. So it would not be this budget year that we would work the capital in, but certainly it's going to be needed, a topic that's need to be talked about as we discuss rate increases. One of the documents I did include for you, I struggled with not really knowing what that number is, and not that it's any of your concern at this point, but looking at a percentage of what should go into capital, and what I came up with, I did provide you with a document, is 8% on the water side, because we're a fairly well-established water authority, and up to 15% on the sewer side, because there are infrastructure that needs to be fixed and there's laws that we have to comply with. So that information I'll be bringing back to the WSA to consider, and hopefully when we get our rate study, we'll get more information from that company so I can provide better information for them to make decisions. So if we go on to this next slide, Jerry said real nice. You put me right out here in the middle by highlighting my line item. And I assured him that we're very excited that that we were highlighting him. Jerry holds all the licenses to support the WSA. So when Jerry came in and our last superintendent, Vinnie Caterino, left, Jerry took over supporting WSA, and we allotted him a $12,000 stipend, $6,000 from water, $6,000 from the sewer side. It was put into a line item, and I felt it would be appropriate for us to pull that out so we understand better the costs associated with this specific budget. So thank you, Jerry. We're very appreciative that you hold the license and we can continue to provide water more easily, I should say. So on the next page, and I'm willing to go back into this budget, I'm just trying to highlight most of these line items I cut back because as I said, the last superintendent was trying to build this budget up to kind of layer in infrastructure improvements. I cut it way back to try and get back to looking at a 3-year average and bringing those numbers down. One of the numbers I do want to point out on this page is professional and technical services. I left it at $100,000. That money is our seed money to kind of go after lead and copper. So after talking with staff, we discussed that. And I thought it'd be appropriate to leave it in there so that staff could continue to move this forward with those specific services. Utilities, electric, that was an increase. I increased that by 18%. And I reduced it, but after I looked at the last 3 years, we certainly saw that our electricity was trending upwards. And after we've had meetings with our electric provider, he suggested that we add 18% to the budget. So I did add 18% on both sides of the house. And just as a reminder, water and sewer budgets are pretty identical. There are some very small nuances that address that particular side of the organization, but for the most part, they stay in line. Legal services, we left at $30,000. I felt it was important to put a responsible amount of money in there, but leave it so that it can be tracked by not only the WSA authority, but by the council, because we would have to go for an appropriation if we were to need to put more money in there. So I felt that was a very reasonable amount to leave in there. And then on the expense side, again, in one of the exhibit documents, I provided you a breakdown of how I came up with that $4 million number and why I added it to the budget. I'm happy to go through that further if we need to.
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
Do we really under budget that line item in years past?
I
Or
don't-
is this truly just going from what we were paying to what we should be paying?
Well, it's a two-piece. We were never at a loss, so I don't think we under budgeted. But we weren't paying the rates. So looking at that, and I forget if sewer was 6 years or water was 7 years. But using that average, I felt gave us a great baseline to say, okay, we understand what happened. 3 to 5 years is usually the amount of years that you use to look at an average. With COVID, I didn't really know how COVID would have affected that average, so I went out the additional years. So, because I don't know, by people staying home, maybe they use more water, I don't know. But without really having really dug into it, I just took my best. I want to say it was a guess because we pulled actual numbers, but from my perspective, it was my best guess using the documented numbers that we had. Just so you know, between our operating expenses and our revenue, we have a net positive of about $15,000 on this sewer side. Okay, I could have zeroed it out. I used a round number of $750,000 to balance this budget. If it is a $15,000 net, it could just be carried over as we start to talk to rates with WSA, and it'll just be carried over into offset numbers as we move forward. Okay, on the water operations side, one more slide, please. Well, I guess one more slide. So our first, looking at our revenue number of $2.8 million, that's made up of our water revenue, which is about 1.5 million. on the WSA side for usage, and then we have about $770,000 in flats. Again, same thing, the stipend for Jerry is in here on both sides. And if we go on to the one more slide, it's the same issues. Professional and technical services, we left at $100,000 for the same reasons. Legal and fiscal, the same, utilities, the same. The utilities water, the actual cost is projected in the documents that I gave you in exhibits A and D. If you go one more slide. One thing I didn't really, that I do want to talk about, and I could just catch it right here, is the transfer of 019 water and sewer debt. So considering water and considering sewer, we transferred money to cover our debt increases. So I did give you a document that's probably dated the 20th, but it actually is labeled under Executive Summary Fund 019 Debt Service. I just like to go through this just to make sure that everybody understands what this means and why it's in here. So there is a chart on the last page. Basically, we took, and I would like to thank finance, they worked a lot with our bonding agent, and they actually went through and they relabeled all our bond descriptions associated with WSA. So the benefit of having senior staff that stays with an organization for a long time is they understand the process. So we've changed over all our staff, and a lot of us don't have any idea of what those bonds were associated with. Because as you know, as we get favorable rates, we refinance, and then the name of that refinance will change. So we went through this and we actually renamed everything. So not only one, that we understand it, but number two, for succession planning, we would be able to turn this over to the next person who steps into our position, and there won't be that hard transition for them. So looking at the Excel spreadsheet, the top lines minus the last two, which are starting with that light blue colored WSA interest judgment.
Show them.
Good.
Do we have it?
No, we don't. Are yours not highlighted? Are yours in color? I apologize for that.
They're at the end of the package. Mine are colored, you'll see green.
Okay.
At the bottom, that looks like this, that's correct. That's the problem.
Which package is this? This packet?
No,
No,
it's
which
the package that came out,
Should be labeled Fund 019 Debt Service
this
Bond.
package, with the agenda on the top.
Oh,
Go, I think it's in here. Is it this one?
No, it's
Oh, oh.
It's at the end of these packages.
I really gave it content.
is that in this package? Yeah, yeah.
On 019 debt service there.
Find it.
It's not in.
It's not in this. Okay. All right.
This was planned in the presentation to give me a short break, make you guys work. So basically what we did is, as I was saying, we kind of renamed all our bonds so everybody could understand it for succession planning. So there was a lot of work to kind of do that research and make sure that we're identifying them for other people to understand what they are. And as we do refinance, we will make the effort to kind of rename these so everybody understands moving forward. But the last two items that are labeled new line item, that relates to the water and sewer band and the bond. So the lower chart basically under where it says older bonds total 2018 to 2024. basically what that is referencing is just the total bonds outside of our bond conversion. If you move down to the next set of numbers, it's broken down between the water and sewer and the town side, because we had that 85-15% split between water and sewer. This, we're talking about the $40 million bond. $34 million went to water and sewer, $6 million went to our roads. So it splits that out so that we are tracking this and we can report back to our ratepayers that we have completely separated this and we're keeping separate accounting. Of that breakdown, because we have the interest, which is highlighted in blue, the 1.186 million, which is related to the band. That's further broken down, and so is the bond conversion, which will take place in October of 2026. That's further split up between sewer and water. So what we went back is to how we paid Waterbury, and we broke that out at a 77-23 split. It's not 100% that, it's like 77.23, 23, whatever. But we split it out further so we could understand how do we book this liability to the water and sewer budget. So both the band interest, which is the 1.186 number, is broken out 77.23, and so is the bond interest that we expect to have to pay as we convert this to a bond. If you go down to the last set of numbers, it's basically splitting those two numbers and appropriately giving us numbers that were applied to each water and sewer budget. And that's where the transfer to the Fund 019 came from. It's a lot of information. It took us a little bit of time to come to this and understand the impact of it, but we're very confident in the numbers. Again, WSA has to take into consideration the reserves that we put aside for our operational shortfall in the 25-26 budget. They'll also have to consider the budget freeze and what monies were kept for the budget. And as we identify those numbers, we can apply it towards our band payment, the interest, and our bond conversion. But either way, we need to have it in our budget so that we understand what our true costs are going to be. Again, for our ratepayers, it's not a clear path, but we're going to work very hard to identify this. All these documents that were created, we're going to take them and make them forward facing for our citizens so that they could get a little lighter message from these documents. If they want them, they will be posted on the town's website for the review, but I think it's a lot to digest for anybody, even for somebody who's sitting here. It's a lot to digest. That kind of is my overview. I'm happy to answer any questions or go back and try and clarify any details. I know it's a lot to go through.
Anyone have any questions at this time? Yep.
Mark, the chart that you just went through,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not 100% clear. The ban interest judgment payment that will come due in October.
Yes.
How sure are we of that number?
We're very confident that that's the correct number. What I'm not sure of is how much money we're going to be able to take from the current operating budget and apply to them. So my preliminary discussions with WSA is that I'm hoping that with the budget freeze that we're actually going to be able to pay that and not go back to the ratepayers for that adjustment. That's the goal. But I can't promise that yet. We're not there yet.
Was that anticipated number lower when we went into the whole, referendum and whatnot? I
It
seem
was
to
a little-
remember it not being quite that high.
It was a little bit lower because we were using bond premium to adjust that number. But again, that's going to be part of the bigger conversation So that number's definitely gonna go down. I just don't know by how much. So
Thank you.
I don't know, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think we had about $286,000 in premium, somewhere in that ballpark, and we had anticipated this would be down under $1 million.
And I apologize, but the 765 number, can you explain that again?
Yeah, so when we convert to a bond in October of 2026, basically our payment up front is gonna be interest only. So the true effect of that bond conversion will not hit the budget until 27, 28. So we'll work and continue to update you, WSA, and the ratepayers as we truly understand, but given that we don't know what the interest rate is gonna be or anything like that, we really can't put a finite number on it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Sure.
Are the commercial accounts going to be handled any differently than retail? Or are we to a point where we can project that yet?
As far as
Rates?
rates, so WSA has refused to accept the rates how the council suggested. We're not there yet. They're gonna talk about that. So
You're talking specifically the rates related to the bond?
No, yeah, yes, actually.
yeah,
Okay.
so that's a discussion we haven't really gotten to. They're favoring a flat fee because it's safer for the organization to operate that way. You know, when we first started these discussions, it wasn't really clear whether the council had authority over the WSA. But I know, based on the charter, you do have authority over the council or the WSA. But the state statute gives them full authority under setting rates, so it's conflicting. So, you know, I asked this question quite a few months ago, is what happens if the council wants to try and force WSA? And I don't have an answer. So it's up in the air right now.
Through the chair?
Yep, Dan?
Yeah, so this is great, in terms of this line, because one of the things that I think we talked about last week in our subcommittee, was the position of town manager is actually the chief administrator of WSA. And so if I think about it that way, that role of chief administrator can be, an advisor to WSA, or it can be somebody who's calling the shots and dictating the direction of the organization. And I understand past practice and legal advice, but it's an interesting, WSA refuses to accept rates from the council, right? Which totally adheres to how WSA had great autonomy previously. But I wonder if that's something that, even if state statute creates a barrier between what council can tell WSA to do, with the town manager sitting as his chief administrator, that you would have that role and function to make that happen. Do you think that's that's within that function of the job role?
I actually do not. I completely disagree with you. And the reason why is if you look at our organizational chart, you have the citizens who sit at the top of the organizational chart, then you have the town council, who is our elected officials. From there, you have our appointed officials that sit on our boards and commissions. And from there, you have the town manager. So everybody that we're talking about trying to get to do something sits above me. I don't have that authority. If we look at my authority as it relates to staff, I have full authority to direct staff to do anything within my legal powers to do. But to do it to a sitting authority, I disagree. And I think that would have to be part of a bigger conversation. That's my opinion.
So, yeah, and there's some inconsistencies maybe between what the charter says, and it says to do one thing with the left hand and another thing with the right hand, and they don't agree, kind of thought processes, and that's how you're reading it.
Yes, I think that they have full statutory authority to set the rates, the charter does say you have clear authority over
Mhm.
the authority, so it's a dilemma, and we haven't really identified, what's right or wrong. I think one of the questions I asked the town attorney is it would the council have to sue the water and sewer authority to get them to do something? But then you're appointing, and again, this is a conversation, I'm just giving you my
Yeah.
thought process. It doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. But you appoint the people that sit on that council, and isn't that part of our democratic process, is that if they're not doing the will of the organization above them, you take them off and you move them off that authority. Is that, a process? I mean, I think that's what the process was intended to do. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions at this time? All set?
Oh, I do have another question. I apologize. This was towards the beginning of your presentation, Mark. I just jotted it down so I didn't interrupt you. You mentioned the budget booklet that was formulated in 2025 and the WSA chose not to utilize it. This
Was
is
that
kind
the
of a,
rate study?
It's
I
a
think is
rate,
what.
a rate.
The rate
yeah,
study,
proper
okay.
Terminology, yes.
I have a kind of a few questions related to that. Do you know why they chose not to? And, based on the answer to that question, why would we choose to use them again? And how much do they charge us for that study?
So I don't really have a definitive answer on why they didn't use that rate study in 2025. I believe that the superintendent was sitting there was trying to, again, work on our infrastructure by building up that budget to feather in those infrastructure improvements. I don't think that the rate study, you know what, I prefer not to answer because I really don't know what the true answer is. I don't know what the original cost was, but we have incurred about $4,500 in additional costs since I've been working with them to kind of put this rate study in place. I would have to do some research to find out what the original cost was.
Thank you.
One way or the other, the sooner the rates go to an appropriate amount, the better off we are, just because we already have to kind of make up roughly 750 grand for the next budget through the revenue side. And it takes time for them to go through the process to increase those rates. Any other?
Through the
questions?
chair.
Yep.
So in the budget, it's got 30,000 for legal under sewer and 30,000 legal for water.
Yes,
So we are 60,000, correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
Through the chair. Mark, what's the status of finding a new assistant superintendent for WSA?
So on February 20th, the application process closed. We only had 3 people apply for it, which is not surprising based on all the notoriety going on with our WSA. So there's not a lot of people who are going to want to jump into something like that. Jerry and I did our best to get the notice out to people that we know that are in the area that may take a chance on the job. We are going to go through an interview process. We'll put together a committee and we'll move it forward from there. I feel very strongly with Jerry on the operational side. And after everything we've just gone through with this budgetary process, that anybody stepping into that position, we could support well enough that they could be successful in it. And we'll put that information out there as we go through the interview process.
Do you have any idea of when somebody might be hired and put in place? Is there any time frame?
Maybe by early spring. I'm hoping to get this done and completed sometime in the month of March. But there's a lot of competing interests. There's a lot of work on our plates. We're still digging out in finance. We have all our projects that are going on. So there's a lot of competing interests. We're also going through with our HR director, so that's another one. The goal is sometime in March.
Mhm. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
I, I should have said it on the record, Mark. I love it.
Wait to see my podcast on it.